This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. Words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. Consider this your vitamin or supplement today for your mind, your heart, and your soul. Wherever you download podcasts, would you mind subscribing to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Leave a rating and a brief written review in order to help other people who haven't discovered this podcast yet know where to find it. Thank you for your help. Today I want to ask you a question. What is your what? Now we talk about the why as in why do you do what you do, but what is it that you're doing? What is it that you believe you're trying to accomplish? What is it that you're supposed to be doing? In essence, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Why are you doing what you're doing? And what is it that you're supposed to be doing? The reason we have to even ask this question is for the simple fact that most people don't have a clue what it is they're supposed to be doing. Most people operate like a windsock. They're just waiting for the wind to blow, and whichever way the wind blows, that will determine, in fact, what they're going to do. That's one of the reasons that I love evening and morning routines in which you plan out what you're going to do. I like both of them. Both are essential. But the one that will help you get prepared to not just go through life. Now, I realize no one listening, there's no windsocks listening, but a windsock just waits for the wind to blow, and whichever direction the wind blows, that's the direction that the windsock is going to point toward. Now, here's how it works in our lives. If you don't have a plan, if you don't have goals, if you don't have it clearly marked out what you're going to do each and every day, you're just going to wait for the first person that stops into your office and says, "Hey, do you have a minute?" Reflect for a moment on any time someone has asked you that question. Do you have a minute? Do you have a moment? Number the times that it's only lasted a moment or a minute. Many times they will evolve into hours of conversation that you had no idea was going to happen. You'll wait for a phone call, an email, someone in your office with a loud voice or a problem who wants to drag you in and engage you in solving their problem. That's one of the reasons every night before I go to bed, I make sure that I look over my calendar to see what meetings do I have, where do I need to be tomorrow, what are the things I need in order to prepare for that meeting. And then I look at my goals, I review those and what I'm trying to accomplish, and then I write down 3 most important tasks, 3 things that if nothing else gets done, if there are all kinds of crises and all kinds of interruptions, and you cannot manage and plan for crises or interruptions. They happen for all of us. But I write down 3 things and I make a commitment to myself that I will not go to bed tomorrow evening until all 3 of those things are done. Now again, I have a lot more than 3 things on my list, but those important 3. And at least 1 to 2 of them need to be goal-oriented that will help you reach your goal. And then when I get up early in the next morning and go through my morning routines, one of the things that I make sure I do is I attempt to get 1 or 2 of those important tasks off my list done before I even show up at the office. That way, no matter what happens, I'm able to get through that list. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. And then when the crisis comes, the interruption comes, something that you really do need to attend to that you couldn't see yesterday, you're much more relaxed, you're much more comfortable because you've already gotten 2/3 of the important tasks done. Now, again, I have a lot more than 3 that I'm trying to accomplish, but 3 that are absolutely indispensable. This is why you have to plan your own life. If you don't, someone else will plan it. So what's your what? What are you trying to accomplish and make sure you chip away and you work on it every day. Another thing that will help you knowing what it is you're supposed to be doing is, have you lately really sat down and begin to understand both your strengths and your weaknesses? We all have strengths and weaknesses. It's just a part of life. And when you look at your strengths and weaknesses, you certainly want to maintain your strengths. There are times you have to modify them, and the same thing with your weaknesses. Very rarely are you going to eliminate every weakness in your life. After all, you are a human being and we all have weaknesses. And then there are some that you can eliminate. If there are some things that you've been doing out of habit that are counterproductive, then you don't eliminate it by saying, I'm going to eliminate that. You eliminate that by replacing it with a positive habit that will make a positive impact in your life. So you have to know yourself. Many of us try to trick ourselves into thinking we're someone or something that we're not. You have to evaluate your own life and where you are, and know who you are, and know what you do well, and seek to get better at it. Know what your weaknesses are and try to do a workaround. Try to eliminate some of them. Try to modify them. Try to surround you with people whose strengths is in the area where you're weak. But you have to know, and I don't care who you are listening today, you do not do everything well. And you'll do better to know, what do I do well, and do more of it, and what are the things that I don't do so well that I need help with. Another thing in this area of what is your what is it that you're trying to do, is find something you're good at and seek to master that skill or a skill. In my life, there are a couple of things that I have been told, and I believe, that I do very well. And there was a time in my life where I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to mitigate my weaknesses, to which I never made much of headway in eliminating them. It's only when I heard someone say, work on your strengths, develop your strengths. If you have a skill, become an expert, learn to master that skill. And so in a couple of those areas, I just really began to read and study and find mentors and listen to podcasts and sought to practice and just master a skill. Whatever it is that you're doing, there are some things that you need to do, and you need to master them so that you will do what you've been called to do, and you'll do it with excellence. Now, if you work with people, and everyone works with people, there are people in your family, your friends are people, the people you work with are people. Here's the area that trips us up in our what are we doing, and that is, how do you handle conflict? I would like to tell you that there would be a secret that would just eliminate there ever being conflict in your life. But there is no such thing as a conflict-free life. Many people act like, whether it's the church, at home, and work, the neighborhood, that when conflict happens, that somehow it's something surprising. Like it doesn't happen to anyone else, it just happens to me. There is conflict even in the best of families. Our problem is we don't handle conflict. And I've worked in the church and not-for-profit field the majority of my adult life. And we really struggle in the area of conflict. And one of these days I'm going to do a whole podcast on conflict resolution. But one of the reasons is, if we fail to debate ideas and issues, and we don't handle that and have created an atmosphere where everything's on the table and we can talk about every action and every attitude and every issue, if you don't do that, thinking you're eliminating conflict, then conflict will raise up to the level of personality. Because if we don't deal with the issue and we don't deal with the problem, then it ends up getting centered on individuals, and that's when conflict gets very ugly and very messy. Wherever you work, wherever you volunteer, wherever you are, it is not a healthy environment if you can't put everything on the table and discuss it openly. without interjecting personal attacks. How well do you handle conflict? One of the things you have to do is begin to understand how you see the world is not necessarily how everyone else sees the world. And conflict doesn't have to escalate into all-out war. As a matter of fact, you need to weigh, is the issue worth having a conflict over? Going to lunch at a particular restaurant does not rise to the level of an all-out conflict. But there are some issues that are so important, there are some things that need to be taken care of that are so important that you have to deal with the subject. Now, a lot of people are turned off and are frightened of conflict because in their childhood or their family or a very terrible experience of a relationship that ended in a painful conflict, they just try to avoid it. You can do all that you want to try to avoid it, but believe me, conflict will knock on the door of your life, and it will knock on it often, and you need to know how to handle it properly. Another thing in knowing your what in the area of conflict, let's just move to the next one, is some people use their past as an excuse for their current behavior, as in, that's just the way I am. My friends, that is never a legitimate excuse. You can change, I can change. Take responsibility for who you are and where you are in life right now. It's not your parents' fault. It's not somebody else's fault. Yes, they may have played into the circumstances that happened, but if you're carrying that around in your heart and life and not dealing with it, then you need to go home and look in the mirror and you'll see the person responsible. I'm not necessarily responsible for everything that happens to me, but I am responsible for how I react, how I act, how I choose to go through life, and how I treat others. Conflict and unresolved conflict is a major issue in life, and if you're going to do what it is you've been called to do and you've been asked to do, you're going to have to learn how to handle conflict. The final thing that I would say is you really need accountability partners. I've had several of these down through the years, and right now I'm in an interesting situation because I've never met my accountability partners face to face, the three that I meet with weekly, and we meet over the telephone. And one lives in Wisconsin, one lives in Texas, one lives in California. I live in the Midwest. None of them are in the same vocation that I am in. And yet every week we hold each other accountable and we push each other. And it is a wonderful experience. I've had this and do have this with peers, but it's also nice to have some accountability partners who can speak into your life, ask you what you're trying to do. Are you working on that? Are you changing that? And hold you accountable. There's just something powerful about knowing that on Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, I'm going to have to talk to these three guys. And they're going to ask me, here's what you said you were going to do last week or the week before. Were you able to follow through on it? How's your attitude? How's your actions? Are you executing the plans that you have? I would highly recommend it. We get into trouble when we stay isolated. So when you know what your what is and what it is you're doing, and you do it with excellence and all your might, amazing things begin to happen. You are a great leader. You're doing better than you think you are. Thanks for listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. Words on leadership, goal setting, and productivity, and a whole lot more. I hope today this has been a vitamin for your mind, your heart, and your soul. Until next time, keep improving moment by moment, day by day. Have a great week.